to our special guest. Tonight our special guest is Kim Campbell. Kim is the Chief Executive of the EMA, the Employment and Manufacturers Association. With the election deadline next Saturday, I invited Kim to take the pulse of the Auckland business market. Kim Campbell from the Employment Manufacturers Association, known as EMA.
Indeed.
Great organisation.
Absolutely.
Well, you're the CEO.
I am indeed.
And how many people working there, Kim? Just getting
about 120 full-time equivalents.
100. How do you keep track of them all, Kim?
Well, we've got lots of computers and a very, very able team.
Many people will say EMA, they're not in the employment area or they're not in business. They want to know, well, what do we have an EMA for? What's the whole purpose of it?
Well, we've been around 120 years.
That's long enough to qualify.
And we started out, there was an employers association, goes right to the beginning of business in New Zealand when Auckland started, and we had a manufacturers association. And about 20 years ago, the two organisations came together and formed the employers and manufacturers. And now we have 4,500 members, many of them with a national footprint. We have a branch in Tauranga and in Hamilton. We also run Export New Zealand in the north part of the North Island, in the North Island. And what a lot of people don't realise is we have quite a vigorous and successful training business, EMA learning, and thousands of people go through our courses on safety, on
you name it,
anything, vocational stuff for business. And also we have quite a vigorous legal business, helping people with their employment law. We have a helpline that gets 35,000 calls a year, assisting business.
You're a bit of a watchdog, aren't you, to make sure that the employers and the manufacturers are well looked after by our friends in Wellington?
Political, I'd rather see it as we are politically agnostic. We have no ideology. We are absolutely agnostic as to which party should be running the country, but we will from time to time. We are clearly a pressure group. We put our test is what are we doing? What is the government doing to make New Zealand more prosperous, to enable businesses to succeed?
So you're a watchdog. You're watching
Absolutely.
all the time, making sure that
Russ never sleeps.
Because they're down in Wellington, whether it's National or Labor, they're coming up with ideas all the time. They're going to do this and they're going to do that. And your job is to make sure that some of their harebrained schemes don't, I'll say that slowly, harebrained schemes don't disqualify or affect businesses throughout New Zealand.
Well, we kind of, what the public and probably our audience don't really appreciate is every day of the week we've got literally hundreds of thousands of public officials who are well-intentioned, being prodded by various imperatives, are coming up with stuff. And there's literally a wall of this. And a lot of it, hidden in among it, is stuff that can make life extremely difficult.
Exactly. That's where the watchdog comes
so
in,
we, with our associates at Business New Zealand, which we own a controlling interest of, put filters on this stuff. And where it's going to affect us, most recently was transmission pricing, which could have which will, if the authority does what they say they're going to do, put everybody's power price up. For small business, $7,000 a year. For some of the bigger members, $15 to $16 million a year.
It's high enough, isn't it?
Well, no, this is a serious issue as far as transmission pricing. It was something that people kind of glaze over because it's complicated.
And they tried to bring it in before Christmas.
Well, absolutely. And so I got a coalition of all the lines companies, some of the bigger companies, North East Cog, Top Power, even people from Ashburton. And now we've got the independent power generators as well, all saying, hang on, let's blow the whistle on this. It's been quite a complex and difficult campaign, but it would appear that we seem to be able to have got the government to agree that we need to push the pause button. That doesn't mean that transmission pricing doesn't need reviewing. I think it does. In fact, I think the whole business model for transmission pricing needs reviewing. But you just don't just overnight put everybody's power prices up, you know what I mean? And without them knowing about it, by the way.
Good on you, Kim.
Yeah, so those are the sort of things that we get involved in.
You're fighting the battle. But look, I wanted you to come in today because we've got elections coming up.
No kidding.
Yeah. You've probably noticed
it.
Yeah. So what's the state of Auckland before the new mayor takes over? What's he going to be inheriting? Is everything in good shape business-wise in Auckland?
I guess like all of these things, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I think Len Brown is handing him a very successful city, actually. And I think the history book will reflect that Len some of his triumphs. He's obviously had a few disappointments, but some of his triumphs are certainly getting the Auckland Transport Alignment Project together, where we've got government and local organisations working on transport. The City Rail is now being dug up. Is a tremendous success. He's got a city that's growing very rapidly. So he's handing the new mayor all the problems that growth brings and all the wonderful challenges, which says people are definitely voting with their feet. But with it will come enormous challenges. Don't let anybody underestimate the challenges. If we continue to build infrastructure at the rate that's now being forecast, you will have at least 7 years before the 10 years in the plan get up of dreadful congestion.
It's going
to get a lot worse before it gets any better. You will see a slight respite when the Western Ring Road is completed later this year or early next year. Then the central city will be mayhem while we dig up for the tunnel. But there's other issues that sit underneath it. We have a unitary plan which has been finally filed, 100 objections. Goodness gracious, that is just a disaster. We have to get this plan underway. Also, the funding of the roads is a $2 billion shortfall of the projects which have been identified, and frankly, I'd argue there's a whole lot more that need to be worked on. And then, of course, we've got a very large immigrant population which makes our city vibrant and exciting, but it also creates challenges in terms of where they're going to live, where they're going to be educated, are there going to be jobs for them, and all of the issues that go with that.
I know this is not your area, but give us sixpence worth on the housing crisis, Kim.
Well, it's very much we're involved in it because businesses complaining that people won't transfer here because there's no place to live, and all of us who've got kids worry about, the cost of getting a house. As if you look at the urban, the unitary plan, which pretty much allows intensification across the city, there's absolutely no mention of transport in it. And we think that the cart is before the horse here. We think that really there should have been a transport infrastructure plan around which the urban design should sit. Now, that would be very innovative for New Zealand. The Ministry of Transport doesn't believe that infrastructure should lead economic development, so there's a disconnect here. But you can see the problem with that disconnect in Auckland, because if the unitary plan develops as it is, we'll continue to have serious housing issues because a lot of the people will have difficulty getting to work. They just won't be able to get there. It is, so this is something the new mayor will have to deal with, and he'll have to deal with it very quickly. And what the public that are watching the show need to be aware of is that it isn't just the mayor. There's a council. The mayor's only one vote, and so he needs to have a council that he can work with, and a council that's constructively able to engage in this process. So I would recommend people, A, that they get out there and vote, and B, that they pay attention to the candidates they choose, because A, they need to be competent to deal with what is now quite a large enterprise, and also need to be able to work together.
Now, Kim, Donald Trump's doing well in the United States with, he's anti these globalization, these trade agreements like NAFTA. What's your feeling on those types of agreements? And of course, there's the
again, like everything,
he seemed to have swung everybody against it. Once upon a time, everybody accepted them as part of the norm, but it looks like they're. What's it doing for New Zealand?
If you're middle-aged, white, poorly educated, and unemployed, Trump is music. But of course, he hasn't said how it's going to work. And if
he'll get rid of these agreements,
well, let's park the agreements for just a minute. If, regardless of where the North Atlantic deal or even the Trans-Pacific Partnership were going, if you look back since the global meltdown, trade has gone sideways, if not slightly downwards. And whilst there has been, before that, there were tremendous growth in globalization. Trade has actually gone backwards. Local economies have tried to build and boost their own domestic arrangements. So this is at the end of that, and all of this is going to hasten it. Yet if you look at the tremendous prosperity that the last 40 years have generated in the world, and by any measure we've grown prosperity in the world at a rate that's never been known before, it has been because of trade, the efficiencies that it brings, the exchange of technology and all the things that go with it. His populist, and frankly he's driven that into both he and Bernie Sanders, which has meant that Hillary Clinton has simply had to follow suit, is really not very helpful. And I think what is going to happen is if he does put up the walls and reduce the trade, he will find that a lot of the things he's trying to do aren't going to work. And there's a reason why so many of the jobs have left the United States, and indeed a lot of Western Europe and New Zealand as well, is that other people could do the stuff better and cheaper. And what they haven't done is started doing the stuff that they can do better and cheaper. And you know, we went through all this in the late 80s under Rogernomics. It was very difficult. And many countries like Greece, for instance, and Portugal and Spain have yet to go through those changes. And now, of course, we're fighting fit. We're seeing that we're growing in spite of tremendous competition.
So Roger did a great job for New Zealand, getting us prepared. What Roger did to New Zealand in 1984 still hasn't happened to America yet.
Yes, and of course, what they did was they lost a whole lot of jobs, and they thought, well, by subsidising things, they could fix it, their steel industry and so on. If you look at pockets of the United States where they have in fact become competitive, they are really competitive. You'll see it in medical technology. You'll see it in even in steel making. In specialist steel and metallurgy, they're very, very good. In materials, in small molecular stuff. You go to Akron, Ohio, where you'll find tremendous progress being made in molecular stuff. In the Boston area, you see tremendous progress in medical science.
And they're considered the Rust Belt states.
Yeah, exactly. There are plenty of examples of it. It's just not enough.
Yeah. Now, Kim, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I'd like to know a bit about Kim Campbell. So, you're a classic baby boomer. I can see that. Would you?
I was born actually in Gothenburg, Sweden, and my parents were living there, and I sort of grew up in Germany. We came here when I was just 9.5, 10 years old to Christchurch. I went to the finest school in New Zealand, Christ College. Yeah. Went to the finest university, probably the known universe, Canterbury University. And I've had a career in business and manufacturing mainly. In recent years in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm still a director of a number of companies, very proudly of Douglas Pharmaceuticals, a very large exporter here in Auckland. So my background and DNA is in trade, in business and manufacturing.
What year was that, the birth? Did you say it?
February 1951.
Classic baby boomer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Classic baby boomer.
Yeah.
It's been a great generation, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been through some good times and really difficult times, but certainly, you know, now running a business advocacy organisation, I feel sort of privileged to do that because I love business. It's something I'm passionate about, and I see the potential out there. I know how to run a business, so when I'm speaking about business, I can do so with some authority.
Now you're doing training. I'll tell you a story. I was talking to a young bricklayer. He's got his own company. He's got 13 staff. And he said that he's just recently hired 3 Filipinos.
I live in the Philippines.
And he said they are absolutely marvellous. And I said to him, well, how do they compare to a New Zealand guy? He said they're hopeless. New Zealanders are hopeless. He won't employ another New Zealander again. He says these Filipinos are just wonderful. So what does that tell us about what's happening to New Zealand?
I lived at 3...
I know this is generalisation.
But I had 3 years until relatively recently. I was living in Manila, so I know the Filipinos very well. And there's a really fundamental difference. These guys coming here, they really, really value their jobs.
They work.
And they know how tough it is for their families back home. And I'll guarantee it, I don't know these guys, but I'll bet you my boots that a big percentage of their income's going home to help a whole village. And so it really matters to them. They work really hard. And that's the story. There's 11 million Filipinos around the world sending home some $20 billion US. Would that our young people did the same thing overseas and sent the money home to us.
Yeah. So have we got to disconnect with our young people? They're
well,
not
yes,
as hardworking as they should be.
One of the problems that I think that we need to change is there's a sense of entitlement that we often have here. The hunger for getting ahead often quite isn't there. We do have in the Pacific and Maori communities, particularly South Auckland and way up north, very high levels of unemployment. Young people who are neither in training or learning, and often coming from families where they intergenerationally have not had any work in the household, so they have no experience. But there are a lot of interventions going on that are helping. There are sort of basic things that we need to do. We need to get these kids a driver's license, for instance. We need to get guidance into their schools so that they know where the education will lead to. Because the world that we're going into is very, very competitive.
So, as an employment and manufacturing association, is our education system doing a good job producing young people for the workforce? Would you say yes or no?
It's a mixed bag. Yes, there. I mean, we see the young graduates coming in often into our place, and I see elsewhere in the industry, are the most outstanding young people. Many of them speak 3 languages. They're articulate, positive. Really, honestly, they're fantastic young people, and there's plenty of them. And of course, many of them do go overseas. But then on the other end, we have some that come out of school who are frankly, not match ready for work. I mean, they're difficulty doing simple arithmetic calculations. Often they say they've got a qualification at NZCE2 level, but they really can't even do simple mathematical calculations. But there is obviously some emphasis on that. I think we've got a ways to go, and we are working on programs on what we call Work Ready.
Work Ready.
It's a Work Ready program. We're working with Auckland City and other educational groups. It's a little passport that the kids can get, and we ensure they get some work experience so they know what it's like. And if they get this passport, it means that they know simple things like when to shop, if you've got to shop at work, personal hygiene, that you're polite to people, all the simple things that are needed to be a useful employee. Because actually employers aren't that difficult, but they do need you to be there. If
the employer's just hoping that you'll come and do a decent day's work for a decent day's pay, aren't they?
And if you're watching this, or you've got kids watching this show, the single biggest attribute you can give them for success in life is a positive attitude.
Now, Kim, we've run out of time. It's fascinating. But a day in the life, very quickly. You arrive at work, you're a happy man, you love what you're doing.
Well, I mean, yesterday we had Mood of the Boardroom breakfast with the Deputy Prime Minister and Grant Robertson, 350 senior businessmen. Then we had a radio interview, a TV interview. We had an executive meeting. This morning I had a senior politician visit me. Very interesting. I had an out-of-towner come for a chat. We had a meeting on policy. We're working on the Resource Management Act right now. We're also working on transport stuff. We've got a program to try and encourage public-private partnerships for the building of our roads. So every day there's a whole range of interesting things to do.
But the highlight of the year has to be your appearance on The Beat Goes On. You'd have
it
to
is
agree
indeed,
with that?
yes.
Look, Kim, great to talk to you, and I look
pleasure.
forward to talking to you. You must come in next year.
I'll be a pleasure.
The city's great, it's growing, and it's vibrant, and you're heading it. So, you're part of the team leading it.
Indeed.
So, thanks, Kim.